There's Just Something About Kansas City is brought to you in part by the generosity of our friends at the Cockrell Family Foundation. Thank you. Welcome, folks, to another episode of There's Just Something About Kansas City. And there is certainly just something about this guy who is sitting across the desk from me today, the one and only Bryan Busby.
Hey.
One of the premier broadcast meteorologists, not just in Kansas City, but in the entire country. And we have known each other for a long, long time, Buzz.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
But
good.
one thing I need with that intro, I need your Venmo so I can send you $100. That's cool.
Oh,
Thank
we'll
you.
take it. We're a 501c3, so we'll and then you can write it off on your taxes as well.
There you go.
So
Boom.
It'd be absolutely perfect. How are you? How are things?
I am fine. This has been a weird year, though, just talking about weather. Usually severe weather goes from March, April, May, and then June it kind of slows down. Not this year.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in August, and we still had severe weather when we were recording this. And so it's been a strange year, but it's been fun. I'll say that.
Hey, well, just on that subject, before we get into everything else, it has, I think we've had more severe weather in the past 5 years maybe than we've had in maybe 10 years
I would say
than we've ever had, right?
I would think so, and it doesn't have to be political. Something is going on.
Yes,
talking
right,
about
exactly.
climate change.
Right.
There's some people say it doesn't exist. The best way I say it, Frank, is meteorology is to climatology as journalism is to historian. What I mean by that is on November 22nd, 1963, a reporter had to figure out what the hell is going on Dealey Plaza in Dallas, where a historian has no deadline, can look at all these different sources and come up with a conclusion. So meteorologists are more worried about day-to-day more so than epoch to epoch.
Right.
Something's going on.
Yeah.
There was something I remember reading in junior high that said if Earth were the size of an apple, by scale, its atmosphere would only be as thick as its skin. And when you put it in that perspective, it's like, it's a very thin veneer. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Well, I was thinking of something else.
Yeah, right. And this is a podcast. You can say whatever comes to your mind. Yeah, it's okay.
But it is so fragile, and I think something's going on. Is it all man-made? No. Is it all cyclical? No. It's a combination of both, and something is going on.
And I think we've had, since the beginning of time, I think we've had warm, hot. Maybe
Absolutely.
just the frequency or how quickly it's turning around now might be the difference.
That's just
part of it, yeah.
And there was no such thing as, meteorologist Ugh back in the caveman days.
Yeah,
It was
right.
Pointing on the on
There
the
weren't a
stone
whole lot
wall.
of hieroglyphics with rainstorms on them, okay? There were some weird-looking animals and some weird-looking things otherwise, but there weren't.
And probably the caveman sports guy was saying, hey, why don't I get time? Why is the weather guy get all the time?
Hey, well, we'll get into that as well. I'll tell you that. That's the other thing. Was the sports guys always had the clash with the weather guys.
This is true.
Yeah.
But we've never worked together in the same shop.
Exactly.
But you're right. We've known each other for years.
Yeah,
and
for
decades.
years. And what's really funny, and this is just an aside, I've worked for Channel 4, of course,
Correct.
and then after I was let go at Channel 4, and I took the buyout of Channel 4, I had about a 4 or 5 month period there where I went over to Channel 5.
5, that's right.
5, and I did a little of their March Madness basketball type stuff, right?
What year was that?
And then, that was 2009.
Okay.
I think it was 2009. And then Jack Harry called me over at Channel 41. I went with Jack.
Right.
So I've worked for 4, 5, and 41. The only station I never worked for was Channel 9.
And why
Which is
that?
I have no idea.
Well, okay.
I think there's a guy called Len Dawson who was just fine.
Yes. Yeah.
over there for a while. Okay.
He's got a name.
Yeah, I think so. God bless you, Lenny. Love Lenny.
Yes, indeed.
he was just great. He was great to me, too. But it was funny when I got the job here, way back when I came down from Green Bay. Now I'm talking about myself, which is weird. When I came down from Green Bay.
No, you're in television. Of course you're going to talk about yourself.
81.
You said this is going to be relaxed, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. I came down from Green Bay, and my mom and dad came to town, and they were watching. They were watching me on TV, and then they were flipping around to see who the competition was. So I came home that night, and my mom says, "I see your competition is Len Dawson." I said, "Yeah, Mom." She says, "Well, you won't be here long." I said, "Oh." Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Nice vote of confidence.
I really give you a pat in the back. But Len was absolutely great. But let's talk about you a little bit.
Sure.
Let's go all the way back. Cleveland, Ohio.
Yes, sir.
Okay, talk about growing up in Cleveland and school and high school and sibs. Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, older brother.
Okay.
He's 5 years older than me. He just retired from the ministry. He's a Presbyterian minister.
Oh, wonderful.
And I tell his congregation, this is not the same man I grew up with. He's trying to get into heaven on the curve, trying to make up for lost time,
right.
complete with a PowerPoint and
Yeah,
eye
exactly.
charts.
Yeah.
Born and raised Cleveland, Ohio, one of two. The inner city of Cleveland, Ohio. It's the hood. I mean, it's like 27th and Indiana.
Okay.
I mean, where next door you would hear gunshots. You would hear like drug deals being made. You would see some of the younger ladies making money that way.
Right.
I mean, that was the neighborhood. Honestly, ironically, when I got here, and I'll go back to Cleveland, Steve Harvey, who we know, is from Cleveland also. And when Hot 103 Jams was doing like a get-together with the clients, they brought him into the Gym Theater. And they wanted me to kind of facilitate and get questions, get people going. You know how that goes.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And this is when Steve was doing his radio show in Chicago. And you know what it's like to do morning radio. You're in bed by 8. This is 8 at night in Kansas City. So his limo came in, his entourage came in. They took him upstairs to the Gem Theater office. And I went up there, he's like this, just, holding his eyes. Mr. Harvey, I'm Bryan Busby. I'm the meteorologist. I'll be facilitating questions. So I just want to have a couple in my back pocket. He said, I understand what you're doing. Where you from? Cleveland. Me too. He perked up. Which side? East side. What neighborhood? Glenville. What street? St. Clair. What block? 114th, 120th.
Wow.
Now, he's older than I am.
Right.
And our families didn't know each other, but we actually grew up in the same hood.
6 blocks away.
6 blocks away in inner city Cleveland, Ohio. I was the youngest of 2. I was in what they called major work, which means I was supposed to be smarter than most kids, kind of like enrichment. And so I had to go to a different school outside of the neighborhood. And honestly, to be in the inner city of Cleveland, Ohio, talking with that proper diction, being a black kid, I was picked on, especially because I also wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to be a meteorologist, Frank, since I was in 3rd grade. And when you think of young kids in the late 60s and 70s, they weren't thinking about being on TV, and certainly not a meteorologist.
A lot of them were just thinking of trying to escape from here. How do I get out of here?
Exactly.
Or they're joining gangs, or they're they're going the wrong way.
Precisely. And the other thing is, if you're talking about meteorologists and you're talking about television back in the 60s and 70s, there were no people of color on television who were themselves. The only 2 people I remember seeing who looked anywhere like me was Julia, which was Diane Carroll, a show on NBC where she was a divorced nurse taking care of her kid, and then Bill Cosby on I Spy. And those are the only 2 people of color who are on TV regularly. So there were no reporters. There were no anchors. There were no sports guys or meteorologists. But I remember saying to Mom and Dad, maybe a year after King got shot, I want to be a TV meteorologist. And they're like, okay.
And you were, how old were you now?
I was 8.
You're 8 years old.
I was 8.
Right after Martin Luther King was shot.
Yes, sir. And what it was, fear is a great motivator in that, sorry to kick that.
It's okay.
Okay, is this paid for? Is the furniture paid for?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
cool.
paid for already.
Okay. I was afraid of thunderstorms. As I said, fear is a great motivator. And so I remember writing my hero, the guy I grew up watching, a guy by the name of Dick Goddard. And Dick Goddard is in the Guinness Book because he was the longest tenured weatherman in the country from 1961 through 2016 at the same station. Wow. Yeah. And so I wrote him and said, Mr. Goddard, what causes thunder and blah, blah, blah. And he wrote me back and he invited me down to the TV station. So from 3rd grade through 12th grade, I would go down to the TV station. And he would show me the maps and kind of ease me into it and kind of say, there's a lot of math in this. And honestly, to his credit, if he would have seen a black kid in the late 60s saying he wants to be on television when he's looking around the newsroom and nobody looks like me, he could have been very polite and said,
Yeah, check it out here, son. Look around.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But he didn't. And I remember when I was deciding between music and meteorology, and I went to talk to him, and I said, I made up my mind. I'm going to go into weather. How can I pay you back? And he had a wry sense of humor. He said to me, well, if you're lucky, some young man or some young lady will come up to you 5 minutes before you have to go on the air on a phone call and talk to you. And he stared at me. And then the little light bulb went off. Ding, did I do that to you? Yep, you certainly did.
Your timing was terrible.
Yeah.
But it was perfect at
Pay
the
it
same
forward.
time. Yes,
so that's
absolutely.
what I do. So it's been since elementary school that I wanted to do this. And Mom was a nurse anesthetist. She put herself through the Cleveland Clinic. She was a nurse first, but then she decided to become a nurse anesthetist. And Dad worked for the Postal Service.
Right.
And he was a customs official. So he was one of the guys who would sort the mail out, but then he promoted himself or got promoted into customs. And so they worked those two jobs. And then Dad also on a Saturday, especially in the spring and summer, would go mow the lawn for rich people in the suburbs.
Yeah, okay.
That's how he made money.
Yeah.
Just to keep bread on the table and keep us.
And so really, you owe a lot. You had a nuclear family, which, you ended up, there's a lot of incidences there where one of the parents is missing from the home. A lot of times it is Dad.
Yeah.
But they kept you going on the right path and getting you into the right schools and doing all the right things. I think your mom was the first black
nurse anesthetist, or one of the few in Ohio,
in the state of Ohio at the time. So she knew about breaking barriers, and she was not afraid. And I think you probably learned a lot of that from her.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because when I remember getting a difficulty getting through physics. Because, again, to get through meteorology.
I'll tell you a couple of stories about math, but you go ahead.
3 semesters of calculus, differential equations, vector analysis. By the time you get your meteorology degree, you can get a math major. You're about 2 or 3 courses short of a math major. And if you want to go into research, you're taking quantum mechanics and chemistry, but you have to take physics. And that's why meteorologists are very good pool players, because we know angles. It's great. And I
never thought about that.
Yeah. That's a hustle. Anyway, that's another story.
I think you've done that a few times. Yeah. Can I try that? But which end of the pool stick do you use?
Yeah, exactly.
All sunk, yeah.
And being lefty, and I'm a lefty.
Yes, that's
so
right. That's right. You are left-handed.
But anyway, I was having a tough time with physics, and I remember calling Mom and said, "Mom, I think I'm just going to change my major to."
And you were, but by this time you were at SLU.
I was at St. Louis.
St. Louis University.
Yeah,
right,
we can go back to the elementary and all that stuff too. But just since you talked about Mom. I said, Mom, this physics is really giving me a tough time. I think I'm going to change my major to radio and television. Mom could just put together sentences that would make a Popeye blush. Certain words. And you're looking,
love Mom.
Oh, yeah.
I love Mom already, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I'm looking, that's a pronoun and an adverb.
And an adjective, all in the same phrase.
All
Same
beginning
word.
with an F. I had no idea. Who knew? Where is my American Express card? When I get there, son of a bitch. And she convinced me to stay into it. And I'm glad she did. So yeah, that was it. But the one other thing I want to say about Mom and Dad was I had a third parent. I had my mother's mother who lived with us.
Grandma.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And she had MS. And that's the whole reason I did the MS 150 all those years when Channel 9 was the media partner. And I saw her walk with a little discomfort and then walk with a cane and then walk with a brace on one leg and then on two and then a cane and then a walker and then in a wheelchair. And I went to a school kind of like Pembroke. Just that's where Mom and Dad and doing those 3 jobs.
And that's why your dad's out cutting lawns and making extra money. It wasn't just, I think they could have probably put food on the table and a roof over here was not too much of a problem. But
exactly.
When you start to go to a private school of that nature, it becomes a whole different
And my
situation.
brother, who was 5 years older, was still finishing up college. So they had his college and my high school.
Exactly.
But I remember him going out, as we said, on Saturdays, and I would go out on this private school, and I would study science, and I would study math, but I wouldn't study some of the other subjects because it didn't interest me. And so I get a C on a test I didn't study. And I'm kicking the cat and being all just a spoiled brat. And there she is sitting in her wheelchair singing a Negro spiritual with a smile on her face.
Yeah.
It's like shit. I mean,
Right.
okay, what's really going on here?
Yeah.
You have power over this grade if you just apply yourself.
Sure.
And she's sitting in her wheelchair still making the best of it.
Yeah.
So it put perspective. That light bulb didn't come off, Frank, until I saw her in the casket. And it's like, that's what you were trying to tell me.
Yeah.
That's what you were trying to tell me many decades ago.
Yeah. So it's amazing where you get your inspiration from and your drive from.
Mm-hmm.
You can just pick out some of those things. And they can be, now that was a major thing, but they can be very small too.
Yeah.
They can just be this little kernel, this little seed in the back of your brain where you did
Absolutely.
it. But you definitely, as you're in high school now, okay, again, You're African American, okay, and you're at this school. It's probably predominantly white. I'm going to assume, okay. But you end up, I think it was during high school that you ended up actually doing the weather for a couple radio stations when you're in high school.
Yes, sir.
That they trusted you to do that.
Well, I think,
or were you just a pain in the ass and you just kept banging on the door all the time?
Combo of both. Combo of both. But and I'm sure you've done commencement speeches, and I tell people it's not always what you know, it's who you know. Mm-hmm. And before the teachers, wrestle me to the ground and take the mic away from me and say, well, thank you, Mr. Busby, for your comment. What you know will get you the job. Who you know may get you the interview, but you still got to close the deal. There was a classmate of mine whose dad was the evening or the PM drive time host on WBOE, which was owned by the broadcasting, or what was it? BOE was owned by the Board of Education. BOE, that's what it stood for.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And it was the NPR.
Makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. It was the NPR affiliate for Cleveland. And so he would do the evenings, and he would have me do the weather after talking to Carrick and said, well, yeah, come down to the station. And I recorded some, and by that time I had to script everything and do 15 takes as opposed to ad-libbing. We do it now that way. But that's what put me on. And ironically, the voice has been about the same after puberty. And so these people heard Weatherman Bryan Busby on WBOE, and there was a weekend opening at the NBC owned and operated station, WKYC, and they called. And
right,
said,
this is a TV station now. Now it's big time, yeah.
Yeah, they said, well, would you like to come down and audition? Yeah, yes, I'd love to come down. I'd be delighted, So I come down there, and I have on this, all right, think of the time. You
probably have on your high school blazer. I think you probably had to wear a blazer in high school,
You did,
right?
And that was navy and khakis. But no, I decided to wear, don't ask me why, because there's a new suit. I was wearing my favorite lime green suit.
God.
Okay? I can show you that clip. It's somewhere on YouTube. So this 16-year-old kid in a lime green suit is down at WKYC, and they come out to meet Bryan Busby to take him into the studio, and they see this kid, and they ask, is your dad parking the car? I said, no. You're Bryan Busby? Yes. Okay, come on back. We already have the crew there,
Yeah, sure. You might as well do it. Let's do it, yeah.
And so that's how that started. But so I started doing radio weather, and my brother at that time was a salesman for the other radio station, WELW.
Okay.
And so because he was doing sales, he just said to the GM, and the GM's like, hey, we can sponsor that. I can make money.
Yeah, that's exactly
so
right.
that's how that happened. So
yeah.
And so that's
well, that's a great start. I mean, and then all of a sudden now, so you're in high school and you're in a good high school. Yep. So obviously your grades are great. And now it comes time to make a decision on college.
Yeah.
Okay. How many other schools were you thinking about before you settled on St. Louis University? And why did you settle on SLU? This will be good.
Okay, you're a parent.
yeah, I am. God save me. Yes, I am.
Okay, I was accepted in Ohio State, which is in Columbus.
Oh, yeah.
Michigan, which is in Ann Arbor. And
well, you can't go from Ohio to Michigan.
No, you can't.
You're not allowed, so go ahead.
Exactly. And so Mom and Dad were saying things like, oh, well, that's not too far of a drive. We can come up and visit you every weekend. So St. Louis U also made it to the top of the list.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'll see you at Christmas. I'll see you at Easter. I'll bring laundry. Take care. And that's how I did it. I just want to get away. The youngest of two kids, kind of sheltered and made fun of because I want to be a meteorologist. Sure. And St. Louis U actually has a very good meteorology department. The school is one of the first west of the Mississippi. So when Lewis and Clark did that expedition because of the Louisiana Purchase, shortly thereafter, a lot of their diaries, I hear, went back to St. Louis U in a repository, and they're there. But because I guess we didn't know what was happening with the westward expansion, they decided to have a meteorology department. They didn't call it that back then when the university first started, but they decided to have an Earth and Atmospheric Science department. And so the whole reason I chose St. Louis is because it's far away from Mom and Dad.
Yeah. Well, that's, That's good. You get 4 or 5 hours away and you're good.
Yeah.
Okay. If
it was
you're
10.
If you're 2, you're in deep trouble. Okay. If you're like from here to Kansas or here to Missouri or K-State, you're in big trouble. Mom and dad are going to be here all the time.
Yeah, and this is before the movie American Pie came out.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Mom and dad barge in. It's like,
Yes.
oh, I'm kind of busy. You know.
Just a little. Remember the tie on the door. Okay. All right. The tie's on the door.
Yeah.
Now. Just don't come in here.
Yeah, but Dad never went to college, so he wouldn't know what that meant.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
like,
Absolutely. Which is
you
terrific.
left this.
Yeah. I'm still getting a real good thread of mom and dad, though, which I think is terrific. Yeah. So you go to SLU, and you're having problems. You almost switched majors, but you did not.
Nope.
You suffered through the physics and calculus and all the other math courses. And so you get out of SLU, or you're getting out of SLU, and you're actually, while you're there, you're over at KTVI.
True.
Okay, doing the weather.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. Was there a link between SLU and KTVI, like KOMU at Mizzou?
Right.
Okay, has their journalism school does a lot of stuff for KOMU. Was it the same with SLU at KTVI at that time?
No, it wasn't. But what they wanted to do, Frank, they tried for 2 or 3 years to get an internship in the TV station. Because most meteorology majors don't like television because it's not the true science. It's show business. You're wearing makeup.
Right.
You're making a lot more money than I will at the National Weather Service. There's a lot of jealousy there back then. I don't think there's as much there now because they understand we're all in this together.
Yeah. It's a lot like sports is the same way. Remember all the newspaper guys?
Oh,
they
that's
wouldn't
true.
have thought of going on radio or television. Oh, now
Yeah.
that's the biggest part of their job. That's where they make more money than they do writing for the newspaper.
That's true.
Same deal.
And so they wanted to get an internship at a TV station. And so I came in not knowing that you don't do internships until senior year. So first semester.
Well, you were working on radio when you were, when you were in high school.
So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
That,
sure.
Freshman year of college, I should be on television in market number 12. Yeah, who knew? So I went to the career sort of office where they try to help you figure out what you're going to do after 4 years here at St. Louis University. Tom Potter was the guy's name. And he looked at me like, so you want to do an internship? Well, we're trying to get an internship. And he started the ball rolling to at least tell them to consider this freshman. And so it started off as 2 hours of credit, turned into 2 hours of credit in part-time, and then it turned into 2 hours of part-time and on the air. And it was a union shop, so I had to join AFTRA.
Yes.
And back then it was just per diem. I think I was making $59 a show, and I was doing 2 shows, one on Saturday and one on Sunday. And that's the
It's a
start.
nice supplement.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was great for you in college, the whole thing. But that, you're certainly not a wallflower, okay, as we all know. So you were very aggressive.
Yes.
Not only in the high school, but this is showing the aggression and believing in yourself. And then mom, cursing like a sailor at you, to stay after it. I better keep motivated here. But that all really worked for you. I mean,
Yes and no, but I was cocky back then because then you're 17, almost 18 years old, in market number 12 on television in an ABC affiliate doing weekend weather. I earned this, and it's like, no, you didn't, son, because there are these guys who worked from Paducah to Charlotte, to
Casper, Wyoming,
to get to a St. Louis, and they see this cocky kid at 17, even without a degree, doing weekends. It's like, I had lasted, I think, 2.5, 3 months. Then they took me off, which crushed me. But they did me a favor because, as you know, you can only make a first impression once.
That's right.
And if the water is already poisoned, they're like, we don't like this kid. So they sent me to Magid, one of the consulting firms.
a consultant firm.
Oh, yeah.
I remember those guys. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And
They actually got me my job here from
Really?
Green Bay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was her name? Last name was Fry, Barbara Fry.
Okay.
If you remember that. But she was my talent coach, and they just put me up there, and they said, okay, this is what we need to do. First of all, the ego needs to be put in check. You're 17, and you're just learning this crap. So, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, sure.
And they brought me back, and then I stayed on. And, actually, I should back up. When we were talking about St. Lucie real fast, in the physics, there's one other person I should thank, and you know him, Joe Loria.
Oh, I know Joe, sure.
My
Channel 4.
college roommate. And Josie
That's
and
right. Joe was your college roommate, SLU.
That's right.
Gosh, I forgot about that.
And Josie and I were lab partners in physics, and we would type out the same data, and sometimes they would have to leave the experiment up for a little longer because I was working at the TV station. And we'd have the same data, the same like a word processor. He'd get like an 8 or a 9 on his. I get a 4 on mine. And this professor did not like that she had to keep the apparatus up just for me.
Yeah, right.
And she, even on the second day of class, she said something in the lab. She said, well, I only watch channel 4. I said, well, that has nothing to, I didn't think, I mean, in retrospect, I'm thinking, well, I'm a student.
Right. That's nothing to do with me.
But we took the results of Joe's labs and my labs to another St. Louis U board that looked at it, and they said, that's not right. And so that professor was asked to leave.
Yes.
So I owe a lot to Joe.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he's a great meteorologist and a great student and a good buddy. We had lunch yesterday, which always freaks people out when they see us.
Oh, yeah, sure. See you together.
You going to 4? No.
Yeah.
You going to 9? No. We're just friends, and I don't have a trident, so I'm not going to kill anybody like an anchorman.
I mean, on the air, you want to kick his butt.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no doubt. But when you're out of there, it's like Jack Harry and I were the same way. Mm-hmm. On the air, we wanted to kick each other's butt, get the story first, whatever. Then we go out and play golf on Saturday and Sundays and just, have a good old time.
Because nobody understands what we go through.
Exactly.
And especially now with emails and social media and people being rude. I mean,
really?
Oh, yeah.
I've never experienced that.
I bet not. That's why my therapist is on speed dial right here, But we'll compare wounds like, why'd you interrupt
oh, gosh.
NASCAR for him?
Yes, right.
Bachelor for me, and just whatever show. And people are so selfish and myopic that if it doesn't affect their cul-de-sac at their time, they want you off the air.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that it's done for a different reason. And the analogy I used to use, which we can't use anymore, and I say, let's say Frank Bull is the MC of this banquet, and you're having a good time, and the band's playing, and the wait staff is, serving the meal, and you're talking to other people at the table. Yeah. All of a sudden, Frank gets up there, makes the band stop, shuts you guys up to say that somebody left their lights on. That unscheduled interruption in the program had to be made for the benefit of one person. And if you want him to make that interruption when it's actually your car with the lights on, then you have to sit through it when it's somebody else's.
That's exactly right.
But people don't think like that anymore.
Especially when you get to the outer fringes of the severe weather.
Mm-hmm.
It's left Kansas City, the sun's out or whatever, but the tornado is now moving its way towards, I don't know, give me the outer Marshall, Missouri. Yeah. Okay, it's moving towards Marshall. You got to stay on for those people in Marshall because they get Kansas City as their main ADI, area dominant influence. Right. That's their main TV station.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is very therapeutic. Thank you. So that's going to save me $150 in talking to my therapist. Thank you, Frank.
There you go. See? Yeah. Well, I'll Venmo you. Don't worry.
That's 2 now. The intro and now this.
It's all come on. So you spend 8 years in St. Louis.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so how'd you get here? Well, what was the deal here? Because St. Louis is actually, for people who don't, is a larger television market than Kansas City is. So normally you'd go from St. Louis maybe to New York or to Washington or to Philadelphia or somewhere. Instead, you went from St. Louis, larger market, to Kansas City, smaller market. How'd that all come about?
Okay. Well, let's go back to 1983 when TWA was hubbed in St. Louis. And I was doing weekends, as you mentioned, at KTVI. And there was a guy by the name of Mickey Hooten, who was the general manager of the station in Milwaukee, WISN. And they were looking for a weekend person. But he was in the lounge, because I guess he's a frequent flyer, and he saw this guy on TV doing the weather. And he kind of took my name down, called my agent, and said, we'd like to fly him up. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, okay, well, because I was, doing weekends in St. Louis.
That's right.
And that's all right, but they were talking about possibly moving me to a little more than weekends, to possibly do at least 3 days a week to fill out the full time. And so I entertained it. It was kind of cool, and I turned them down because I wanted to do a little more in my degree and do a little more grad work. Mm-hmm. And Mickey said, well, we're going to come back to you. We're going to keep you in mind. Hearst is not going to forget who you are. And Hearst owns Channel 9 here.
Channel 9 here, ABC affiliate.
Right. So for me, it was... I was only doing weekends in St. Louis, and here I was doing weekends initially, and they decided to match my salary that I was making in a bigger market. And I didn't have a contract in St. Louis. There was something about having a 3-year ironclad contract where there were bumps. It's like you could see it as opposed to just
we'll get to you.
Yeah. And so that's what really did it for me.
Yeah.
And so it's been fun. It's been a great ride ever since.
Boy, you've had a great ride. Yeah. You were when you're at we'll get back to KTVI.
Sure.
You were one of the first black meteorologists in the entire country, correct?
Yes.
On television.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, they've done a little more.
Again, just like your mom. Pioneer sort of thing, yeah.
Exactly. What's weird is I was just named a fellow of the American Meteorological Society, which they give out to people who have contributed to the industry, and I guess I'm one of those.
Oh, you are.
Well, I appreciate that.
We'll get to the mentoring here in a minute. Go ahead.
But they did some research, and they say that I'm the Jackie Robinson of television weather, and that I was the first African-American male meteorologist on TV. I make that distinction because there's a lady by the name of June Bacon Bursey. Google it, June as in the month, bacon, breakfast. Bursey is her last name. And she was an African-American female meteorologist on television in the early 70s, shortly after King got shot, in friggin' Buffalo, New York. Wow. And she did well up there. And she's like, remember the movie that a few years ago, Hidden Figures?
Oh, yes. Yeah. About the women who did all the math, all the stuff for the...
for NASA.
For NASA, all
the
all
Mercury.
The calculus, all the stuff to get on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right.
So she worked for the National Weather Service. She worked for NASA. I mean, she's just a heavy hitter. But she was the first on television.
And it's amazing she's a woman.
Yeah.
Of all things, because back in those days, there's no trust. There are no female anchors.
Right.
There were no female sports reporters. There were no,
And nothing against Buffalo, New York, but you wouldn't think it'd be as progressive.
There. Yeah, exactly.
But just to fast forward real quick, I remember this is about 5-6 years ago. I said to the American Meteorological Society, I know you can't give out private information, but if I give you my contact, can you give it to June for me to say thank you? Because she was the one who was the pioneer.
Yeah.
Because when I first got into broadcasting, there were like 5 of us who were degreed meteorologists. And think back also to the mid-'80s, where the network guys were all black. You had Spencer Christian, Al Roker, and Mark McEwen.
That's right.
So that was my trajectory. That's what I wanted to do, but be a meteorologist and be African-American or black up there. Anyway, back to, there were only 5 of us when I first got into the business, and we said we could have a national convention of black meteorologists on TV in a Motel 6 meeting room and not run out of shrimp. Because there are only 5 of us. Right. Now there are 169.
Oh, wow.
169. So it's continuing to grow.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to June real fast is I forgot that I gave that information to the AMS, and my phone rang. And it's, hello, is this Bryan? Yeah. This is June Bacon Bursey. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually talking to the legend, the pioneer.
Right.
And we had a conversation for about 45 minutes, and it would have lasted longer, but she was on one of those old phones, battery-operated cordless phones.
Oh, gosh, yeah, the big clunky thing that, it took up a seat in a car.
Just about. And so she and she was calling from California, which is where she was living then. And we were having a good long conversation. And I tried to call her back, but it went straight to voicemail. So that's probably what happened. But I was able to say thank you.
Yeah.
But the thing that freaked me out, Frank, is I asked, have you ever seen my work? She said, oh, I've seen your work. I know who you are. No, you're the legend. You're not supposed to know who.
Yeah, me.
No. And ever since then, it's been kind of cool. And her daughter, I finally met because she was the keynote speaker at the AMS meeting this year, and I was able to say thank you. And I was telling her that story, and she started tearing up. I started tearing up. It was just kind of cool.
Yeah. So you got here in 85.
85.
And you're rocking and rolling with Channel 9, Larry Moore, the whole Len Dawson.
Lori Everett.
Everett, the whole crew was here at that time. It was great. So,
but that was weekends then.
Yes, your weekends.
So it was Dave Stewart, your buddy.
Yeah.
Bob Evans, Bev Chapman,
one
of the most gifted writers. My God.
This is the weekend crew.
Weekends and me. Because it was Larry, Lori, Len, and Dave Dusick, who was my predecessor, on during the week. And I started the week right after the first victory parade. So it was November of 85 when I got here.
Yeah. God, that's just awesome. So you're rolling along at Channel 9. Things are good. Yeah. When did you become the main guy?
They decided to make a switch the third year of my contract. So it was
88?
It was 88. It was May of 88.
All right.
In that, Dan Henry, who you worked with for
God bless him.
Dan Henry Bowser, his real last name, was a non-meteorologist, but was folksy.
And he always, the deal was with him too. He always lets you know, I'm not a meteorologist, but I have 50 of them working for me because he worked with
the National Weather Service.
The National Weather Service.
Exactly.
That's where he got his forecast, and he made he's throwing sun on on a magnetic board, and he's throwing clouds over here and he's throwing rain over here.
But when I got here, he was doing some of the early computer graphics, and he'd always end the weathercast with a cartoon.
Yes,
some sort of animation. And so he was the number one weather guy. Then Channel 5 did something very brilliant to hire a meteorologist with a personality by the name of Mike Thompson.
That's right.
So it was Dan Henry, Mike Thompson, Dave Dusick. And Dave was a little more serious. He was more of a meteorologist. And so he was trying to do the counter-programming to, let's say, this is how the weather is. Well, they every once in a while would do focus groups. And they found out that in the first 2 years I was here, I had the it factor, whatever that is, and that this kid, for whatever reason, sparkles.
Right.
And so they gave me the 5 o'clock news 3 days a week, and I was still on weekends. And then they decided to go in a different direction, and then they gave me the 5 o'clock Monday through Friday. And then by May of 88, they said, let's make him the chief. Yeah,
let's just make him chief. So you're rolling right along. And 97, 98 comes, and here comes Good Morning America.
Yes, sir.
Talk to me about this. I mean, you're one of the finalists for Al Roker's job.
Spencer Christian.
I'm sorry, Spencer Christian at the time. That's right. But you were one of the finalists to get that job.
Yes, sir.
That must have been that must have been incredible.
It was. Frank, it is, again, that's where my agent was pushing me, and that's where I wanted to go.
Yeah, that was your aspiration to be
Absolutely.
There,
to be not only just a weatherman, but a meteorologist on the national television. And, there were other meteorologists because you had, let me think here now, Bob Ryan, who was on the Today Show. He was a meteorologist. Joe Whitty, who was also a meteorologist on the Today Show. But there was nobody on ABC. Oh, Dave Murray. Dave Murray, who came from St. Louis, who went up there. So there hadn't been one in a while. And since they were casting the black role, if you will, for the main anchor team in the weather position, there weren't that many to choose from. And so back in 98, yes, I was one of 3 finalists. And they put me up there the same week that President Clinton was testifying on Capitol Hill.
Oh, yeah.
That was the week I was on in August of 98. And it's very easy to lose sight of reality at the network level. It really is. I remember I flew in the night before. They put me up in the hotel. They told me to go by the studio to get a lay of the land.
Check it out, yeah.
Aaron Brown was doing weekends. I don't know if you remember Aaron. Aaron was on CNN at one time, but he was kind of surly and kind of sarcastic. And, all right, kid, so you want to do weather? Yes, sir.
Let me tell you about the weather.
He just said, good luck. And he walked off, and that was it. So now the studio's getting dim, and the crew's still there, but they knew they had to get the new guy acclimated. So they said, okay, this is where the big screen is. This is where you're going to stand. This is your mark. That's where the sofa is. Do you have any questions? Put a map up. Put a map up. They put a map up. Any questions? No. Okay, that's a wrap. Lights go down. Everybody's leaving. I'm like, that?
Well, that was it?
That's my
I'm
rehearsal.
Practice this real quick?
Yeah. No. So for 5 minutes, I'm just standing out there going, holy crap, this is it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to go back to the hotel. And to do Good Morning America, you're up early. And if you've ever been in New York, it's loud.
Yeah, it is loud.
And there are a lot
tough to sleep.
Yeah. And so I'm already nervous, trying to sleep, and I'm hearing taxi horns and everybody else honking outside. I get to the studio, and they have a makeup artist. And for the first time, Frank, we put on makeup.
Our own, just slap it on.
Exactly. This lady has a palette, and she's mixing a little mocha and some caramel because you're a little darker here. Seriously, I mean, like spackling to get this crap off.
Can I smile? Am I going to crack this?
Yeah, exactly. And I was in the chair for probably 40 minutes.
Oh, gosh.
And so the weather producer comes in, and he asked me what do I want to talk about, and I said, well, do you guys ever do airport delays? You want to do airport delays? So something that he had not done before or in a while. So it's just, usually the cookie cutter forecast.
Right.
And so he was
get on and get off.
Yeah, but he's like, oh my goodness, this would be great. But there's a whole team that does all the graphics. There's a whole team that does all the forecasting. All you do is talk.
Yeah.
Real funny story, real fast. There are a lot of unions up at the network level.
Yeah.
And I knew, and Spencer told me about audio, where they ask you lapel or tie. Do you want your mic on the lapel or your mic on the tie? And the IFB, the little earpiece, you can put it in your ear, but they have to connect the wire.
Don't touch it.
Yes. And if you go to the bathroom, even for a deuce, you can't turn off the microphone.
Plop, plop, fizz, fizz.
Well, yeah, if it's fizzing, then you got other issues. But yeah, so he told me about that. But then
we don't turn off the microphone.
You can't turn off the mic. It's horrible.
That's great.
But anyway, I'm walking to the set with a fuchsia mug in an Evian water, and this guy is reading the newspaper in the shadows, and I'm walking within the lights, and he says, "Stop!" He yells at me. "What are you doing?" So I'm walking on set. "Stop! What's that?" "It's an Evian in a cup." "Give them to me." "Give them to," and I said, "Oh, sure. Okay." Yeah. So he gives me a Good Morning America mug and a fresh Evian. And I sit next to...
It's all about sponsorships and all that.
No, something even more bizarre than that. So I'm sitting next to Kevin, who is the anchor, who's also auditioning for Good Morning America, because they're trying to get a younger cast to take on the Today Show, which was number one. But I sat next to Kevin. I said, "That was very nice of him." He said, No. He's a prop master. Anything that appears on camera has to be handled by a prop master. So he handed me the cup, and he handed me the water, and so now I could go on set. I wanted a Danish, and he had to pick out the Danish, just on the off chance it would appear on camera. It's a throwback to when soap operas were done live, that it's not my responsibility to find the gun to shoot the guy in the next scene. Oh. Brought to you by...
Prop Master.
Yes, I know. I wonder who that was.
Yeah, I wonder who that was. Yeah, who was that woman sneaking in here?
Hi, I'm Bryan Busby, and when I'm under the pressure, I drink out of this mug. No, so he had to hand a Danish to me on the off chance it would be seen on camera. So I was doing a live shot from Times Square, where the two roads come together, talking about the ball that was going to fall. Before.
New Year's.
Yeah. So to do a live shot, Frank, you remember, is one guy in the truck and the camera guy.
Right.
That's it. There was a truck operator, the camera operator, a gaffer, a light engineer, a makeup artist, a runner in case I wanted coffee, a floor director.
Probably had a sound guy.
Sound guy, thank you. Security. So there are like 9 or 10 people on this little slab of concrete on Times Square. And they all had a responsibility to do this live shot. And I could tell they were putting me through a test because they want to see if I would clam up if something broke down.
Yeah.
So these engineers are going, "Oh my gosh, the camera is not working." While I'm still talking on camera to see, am I going to freeze or am I just going to keep rolling with it? Long story short, it was fun. But it was a week of a litmus test to say across the country, do you like this guy? Do you not like this guy?
Yeah, right.
I was a little heavier back then, and so they thought some people just labeled me as a Al Roker knockoff.
Okay.
Most people thought I talked too fast, but they did offer.
Which is funny if it's a New York audience.
Yeah.
Nobody talks faster than those people.
Exactly. And, they came up with an offer, but it was a 1-year deal. With outs every 6 months, and they were talking to my agent, and I remember them saying something to Pam and said, "Well, we're taking a big risk with Bryan because usually we go to big markets, and he's coming from Kansas City." Well, she said, "Well, he's number one in this market. It's one of the few ABC stations that's number one. You guys are number 2 to the Today Show, so who's taking a bigger risk by going with who?" And the phone stopped ringing. And I was pissed at her. I said, "I wanted this job." And she said, "First of all, they're lowballing you with the money. I'll talk. It's $375 to live in New York City.
Yeah,
$375. But they didn't do their homework, because if you do a cost of living comparison, it was a pay cut and only a 1-year deal. So that was not good. But I was wanting it for the wrong reasons, to prove to those kids in the inner city of Cleveland, Ohio, who made fun.
I told you I was going to get on network.
Exactly. She said, I know that you're upset and you may want to part ways and you may not want to talk to me for a while, but it's in your best interest that we turn this down, because you're worth more than that.
Yeah.
And it was about 8 days of licking my wounds and not talking to her.
Yeah.
And then I was like, yeah, you're right. I think I sent her flowers.
But again, you never left the market. I mean, you've had to have had many opportunities to leave this market, but you never left Kansas City.
What's funny is, what was his name? The news director over at 4, Mike.
Mike Lewis.
Yeah. Was it?
No. Well, he was after. Mike McDonald.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mike Lewis was later. Yeah.
If you can't beat him,
Mike hired me.
Okay. Well, if you can't beat him, get him a job outside of the market.
Exactly.
So here I am getting offers from Boston, in Detroit, in D.C., in Frisco, in Atlanta. And I remember usually they would go through my agent, but they talked to me, and I'd ask, well, how'd you get my tape? And they said, well, it was sent to us by Mike McDonald.
Mike McDonald. Yeah, he's trying to get you out of the market. Sure.
So, yeah, there were a lot of other opportunities, but I've learned that it's kind of nice, especially in this industry, to be respected and to be you.
And be wanted.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And, the old saying is, it's good to be a big fish in a big pond or a small pond. I say it's nice to be a big fish in a happy pond.
Yeah.
And so 9 lets me do weather the way I want to do it, lets me tell the team how I think it should be done to compete against the other 3 stations. And so there's a lot of autonomy there. So, yeah, it's a happy pond. And, 38 years, 39 years being here, it's been a good, long run.
You bet. You bet. You obviously love the area.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you just love the people, and I think that's really important. And you've gotten every award imaginable: Silver Circle, 9 Emmys, Outstanding Missourian, Media Professionals, Black Achievers Award from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and then just not too long ago, Missouri Broadcasters Hall of Fame.
Right.
So you have definitely run the gamut here in town. That's for sure.
And I'll tell you, the last one you mentioned, the Missouri Broadcasters Hall of Fame, is weird when you hear people like Mitch Holthus and Ann Peterson and Walter Cronkite and Bob Costas and Rush Limbaugh are in that same sphere. It's humbling, and I can tell that I can't take a compliment. I never have been able to take a compliment. It's flattering, but it's been a fun run.
Okay, before we get off of the weather, okay, I just want to talk, and we get into music.
Oh, okay,
and then we get into Georgie Global.
Oh my gosh,
and Disney.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, talk about your mentorship. You have been a terrific mentor for other people, and I think you learned that along the way that, like you said, sometimes not what you know, it's who you know and who you stay in contact with. But you have mentored an incredibly long list of meteorologists who are working in the country as we speak.
Right. Right now, Frank, there are 40 who are gainfully employed now. Now, if you want to go back to...
That is amazing.
Well, thank you.
That is amazing.
Thank you so much. And some do it for a while, and then they decide to have a family, and, this business is rough on relationships, so they'll go into pharmaceutical sales or, becoming a financial planner.
PIO, a public information officer for a school district, or the police department or the fire department.
Exactly.
Like that. Yeah, right.
But they'll still at least get their toe in the water and do it for a while and say thank you for that. But the skills that they're doing with us, with this... Well,
they translate.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The smallest market I have right now is Bozeman, Montana. The biggest market, I have somebody in New York City. It's just something I've always done in that I did it with Joe. God, Joe was one of my first since we were college roommates. And it was close because I was in college about the same time as helping people get their first job, and I just never grew out of it. So it's been fun. And it was even more fun was the fact that at one time, not too long ago, my competitors in this market were 3 of my proteges. Joe on 4. At the time, it was Mike Nico on 41. And then on 5, it was Aaron Little who worked with me. So let me just borrow this for a second. I think I would have to do the weather forecast like Andy Reid. So the other 3 couldn't see what I was forecasting.
Okay, let's watch Bryan, and we have our forecast. Okay, it's a very easy day, right? Just record it.
But they have my playbook. They know my style. They know my philosophy.
Sure.
Because 9 out of 10 meteorologists, when they first start, will say, this cold front will give us a chance of rain. Put the cart before the horse? No.
Yeah.
In other words, give the effect before the cause. This rain is going to come in with this cold front.
Yeah, right.
And that's something Dan did naturally.
Yeah.
Because people can relate to rain more so than the blue line with the triangles and stuff like that. And especially if you're a meteorologist, you're talking more science. And you got to break it down so that
because most people don't know it. You start throwing out, alphabet soup, and they're going to go, "This guy just lost me."
Yeah.
So
you gotta be
I think
relatable.
that's where sports guys go wrong too. They, it's velo and not velocity. It's war and it's ERA instead of There's a lot of fans. They'll know some of them, but not all of them, and and they're afraid to ask. They just don't want to. I don't want to seem like I don't want to talk about it, but you definitely run into that.
When you're on the 35-yard line, you're trying to go for the hat trick.
Yeah,
that's so important.
Yeah, really.
Isn't that right?
Absolutely.
Hat trick?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. One of those two. That's a hockey term. We lost that team a long time ago.
I know, I'm kidding.
So with all these people like that just, I mean, to me, I hated interns because I thought one of them someday was going to come take my job. So I didn't quite have the confidence you had. I was worried about these little punks coming out of college with their journalism degrees, which I didn't have.
Right.
And it was just one of those deals.
And would probably settle for less money than you're making.
Jeez, you kidding?
I get that.
That's what you're really worried about too. Okay. The music. Okay. Where did you get your love? And not just for music, but it probably started with maybe something else, but your love for classical music. You're a timpanist.
Yes.
You work with the KC Symphony and a lot of others I'm going to talk about here.
Yeah.
Where did this come from?
It was a set of records that Mom and Dad had from, I forget who it was, but there were a couple albums that had all the Gilbert and Sullivan operettas and Beethoven and Mozart. And so that was what I was exposed to. At the same time, I was exposed to Dakota Stanton and Count Basie and Duke Ellington and Oscar Peterson. So there was jazz and there was classical.
Right.
And if you listen to jazz, there's a lot of influence from classical. So
you weren't really into rock and roll or Motown or the Beatles or anything of that nature?
Initially, no. But as I got into my teens, I appreciated Motown, like the Temptations and the Supremes and the Four Tops. And then
Smokey.
Smokey. It's funny you should mention Smokey. At the there's a bazaar at the church, and I forgot what game of chance, and I won it, and it was a certificate to buy a 45. And the very first record I ever bought was Tears of the Clown by Smokey Robinson.
Doon, doon.
Doon, 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 which had a bassoon, which is a classical music instrument in that. And he also had timpani and a couple like Baby Let's Cruise with timpani there. That's much later. I digress. Anyway, that's the first time actually. Is that my camera?
Yeah, sort of.
Hi.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the first time I looked at it. Breaking the fourth plank or the fourth wall. Anyway, Squirrel. Busby, it started off with classical and jazz, and then it just went from there. But Mom and Dad wanted to expose us to sports and to music and art, and so they bought a piano. And so Mom and Dad made my brother and I take piano lessons. And so when you're taking piano lessons, the only thing you play initially is classical music.
Right, exactly.
So that's the first thing
you're
exposed to.
That's all they taught.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So they're not going, jazz? You expect me to teach you jazz? That's preposterous. Okay, lady, get over yourself. But, there's that sort of hoity-toity.
Yeah, I understand.
But, yeah. And then in band and in orchestra in school, and God love music teachers in elementary school, you must have 10 ears to be able to put up with screech. Because we're not good back then. And you have to go, that's really good. No, it's not. Yeah. Okay. But so it just started like that. It just started in school band, school orchestra. And I was playing trumpet.
Okay.
But my forward-thinking parents decided to put braces on my teeth. So you can't play trumpet with braces on your teeth. But with my piano background, I knew the keyboard. So I went to percussion without using my mouth, glockenspiel, xylophone, all that stuff. And then ended up on timpani. And I just
which is
never
the
left.
big, you described it as a kettle drum. It looks
Mm-hmm.
like a giant kettle drum, and you're up there. And we've seen you many times on Channel 9.
Yeah.
You're playing with the KC Symphony.
I have played with the
I mean,
symphony.
that's phenomenal. How did you get to there?
It's a union
Did
gig.
you just walk in and say, hey,
No.
like to do this?
No, remember the symphony was playing in the Lyric Theater, and the Lyric Theater was up above Channel 9.
Channel 9 at that time, yeah.
So the timpanist is a guy by the name of Tim Jepson, a buddy of mine, and he's still a friend of mine. And every once in a while, and I don't play with the symphony that often. I haven't played with them in a while. I've emceed a lot of their kids' concerts. But when they need an extra percussionist, like the last thing I think I did for them was we did the Berlioz Requiem, which calls for more than one timpanist. But there's one time, being a union musician also, that Tim broke his arm. And so I had to substitute for a couple of subscription concerts. And I really didn't mean to push him down the steps that hard, but it happened. And he's forgiven me. No, it just happened that when they want a percussionist and my schedule will permit and I'm on their list, they'll go for it.
But they didn't know that you could play this instrument before you just walk in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, your timpanist, fine. Go sit up there. No.
But I was with the Civic Orchestra.
Right.
And the Civic Orchestra is made up of like lawyers and doctors.
Yeah, right.
And
do this part-time.
Yeah. And they said, oh, well, that's the weather guy who's the timpanist of the Civic Orchestra.
Yeah.
And, they say, okay.
You want to do this? Yeah, absolutely. So you also have been with the Kinner Philharmonic, with Johnson County Community College, St. Joe Symphony.
Yes.
The Independence Messiah Community of Christ Auditorium in there. KC Percussion Quartet.
Yes.
Okay. You played with the Moody Blues at the old Sandstone. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you were with your youth symphony guest conductor, and you've done Yardley, Kemper, Carnegie Hall.
Yes.
And in 1992, you did the World's Fair in Seville, Spain.
Yes, I did.
So, yeah, I mean, you were a little bit better than you're giving yourself credit for. I mean, that's phenomenal. Let alone what you do for the way. That is phenomenal. That is incredible.
It is a Walter Mitty-like existence.
Yes.
And to walk on stage and conduct any orchestra on Carnegie Hall's stage is just goosebumps, even talking about it now.
Yeah.
It's been a fun ride.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
still going, too.
That is just phenomenal. And before we get away here, and this has just been fascinating. This is great. I just love it.
Thank you, sir.
After you retire, you want to do voiceover.
Yes.
I know that. Okay. But you do cartoon voices.
Yes, I do.
All right. And you're very involved with the Disney 100, which was at Union Station.
Yep.
And you have a cartoon of your own.
Yes.
Called Georgie Global.
Yes.
Okay.
So
talk about Georgie Global. Who did you draw? Okay.
No, I did
you're
not.
not responsible for Georgie
No,
Global.
I just came up with the bad pun. Anybody over 50 knows Lonesome George Global.
Right.
And so I wanted, because I do bad puns. That's what I do for a living. And so back in the early 90s, I came up with Georgie Global when I was doing school visits, because kids are geographically challenged. And even adults are. When we put the little map in the corner and in severe weather, which one is Jackson County?
Yeah.
Okay, count 3 down and over.
Which one's Wyoming? Which one's
exactly.
Montana?
Yeah, same thing. So Georgie was designed to teach kids to read a map better.
Okay.
But he also could talk about anything that had to do with the globe. He could talk about music and say that the sitar is from India, but the banjo was actually made in Alabama, and point to himself. He could talk about the euro is this currency, the ruble, the drachma. Anyway, so he could talk about all these different subjects. His voice was actually a lot like SpongeBob before SpongeBob even came about. He has a big nose, so he always sounds like he's congested. And that's how Georgie talks.
Which relates to the kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm resurrecting him, because he was also talking about water conservation and plastic bottles back then. But I just think he's about 25 years ahead of his time. And now with TikTok and animation costs coming down so cheap.
Yeah, right.
To do a 20-second vignette, which is a cost a fortune back in the 90s.
Doesn't cost anything now.
Nope. So I'm going to bring him back.
Yeah.
But one of the characters of Disney that I auditioned for. If you've seen the movie The Emperor's New Groove.
I have not.
Okay, well, the villainess is a lady by the name of Yzma. And Yzma was voiced by Eartha Kitt. And they were going to do The Emperor's New School, which was a knockoff cartoon on Saturday mornings on ABC. But she had passed away, and they were auditioning for Yzma. And a friend of mine was able to get me at least into the door, but then they decided not to do it anymore. So Yzma, if you remember, Eartha Kitt sang,
Santa baby,
Yes.
just put a sable under the tree for me.
that's Eartha Kitt.
That's right.
But when she was Yzma, it's like,
Kronk, this is kind of important.
and the one line there everybody says,
Pull the lever, Kronk. Wrong lever!
and that is what if you've seen the movie, you know that scene.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, I like to do cartoon voices. It'd be kind of fun to sit in your underwear at home, not have to worry about shaving and weights and
Sitting
all that
there
stuff.
scratching and farting or whatever.
It helps the character when you scratch.
That's exactly. Yes.
That's how you do Mickey.
So who else? So who else do you do? Who else can you? Yeah. Okay.
Stewie from Family Guy.
That's right.
All right. Quagmire.
Oh, gosh, Goofy. Oh, just
Yeah. So the
Kermit the
Dis-
Frog?
Yeah. So Disney 100 for you is just.
man,
It's reliving your childhood, right?
it's fun, and I have not gone down to see it yet.
Oh, you haven't?
I've
We've
not.
been there. Yeah. In fact, we interviewed the woman from Disney itself, along with George Guastello.
Okay.
And we interviewed right down there in front of all the artifacts, and they change the artifacts all the time. They have so many artifacts from Disney. It's incredible.
Well, the other thing about Disney, though, he's going, okay, Henson, I want to buy all the Muppets. And
Yes.
Marvel, you're going to come under the Disney umbrella. So now there's so much more.
know.
I mean, there's a huge umbrella under Disney initially.
Right.
But now all these other that he's decided to buy, including Lucas for that matter, and all the
Yes,
Star
that's right.
Wars stuff.
Lucasfilms.
Yeah.
absolutely.
take you to my will, yeah.
That's another one, Yoda.
Thanks, Yoda. I think that is fantastic. And you have visited. You were talking about relating to little kids.
Mm-hmm.
You have. Is there an elementary or high school that you have not visited in Kansas City? I don't think so.
I'm sure there are.
Yeah.
But what's weird now is like if I'm at a restaurant, the servers, 30-something, you came to my kindergarten. It's like, couldn't you said like ninth
know.
grade?
I always like that. I watched you all the time when I was growing up. Okay, fine. Yeah,
And the thing I hear now is, are you still on?
yeah, right. Exactly.
Don't you still watch?
Yeah, right. What are you doing?
Yeah.
You watching somebody else now? You can't do that.
No, but now with the advent of apps,
Yes, right.
that's the problem.
It's been crazy. Yeah, it siphons away a lot of the audience, which is going to be, probably after you're gone. It's going to be a real problem for a lot of people.
Yeah, the industry's changing.
So
Yeah.
how much longer?
Well, I'm still in the middle of a contract.
And I know you love it.
Yeah.
So that really helps. And they love you.
Yes.
So they'll keep you there. Be like El Cid. They'll be propping you up in the saddle there
I hope
on the
not.
weather set.
I hope not, but
Using AI.
well, that's the thing that may go away, with AI.
Exactly
But
right.
my goal is to stay in as long as it's still fun.
Yeah.
And every year my pants get closer to my nipples, so I don't want to have the Urkel suspenders. So I hope to get out of it before that happens. And maybe that's our closer.
Oh, that is just classic. Well, you are a treasure here in Kansas City, and just to let you know, the reason you asked, why'd you ask? I said, because you're one of the reasons. There's just something about KC. You're a guy who could have gone anywhere, done anything, but you're here because you love this city.
And the city is growing. I mean, the Crossroads and the Kaufman Center. And although you don't maybe thought that it was a good idea way back when, the streetcar, I mean, the city, oh man, real quick, I'm sorry. I thought we had the closer with the nipples.
Don't be sorry.
But I was on the board of the National Weather Association, and they had not been in this city for decades. And we just had our national conference last year here. And a lot of the folks were saying the same thing. I had no idea about this city because it continues to grow and flourish, and the new airport and all the other things. I mean, well, it's funny when I was trying to convince the board that we should come here, they're saying, well, can Kansas City handle?
Yeah, right.
So,
what
well-
are we going to do?
Okay, well, we had the NFL draft. This is before it happened. So we're going to have the NFL draft. We've had a couple Super Bowls. We had the All-Star game.
That's right.
We're
getting the World Cup.
Yeah, we can handle 500 meteorologists. And they said, boy, this is fun. We want to try to come back And I forget how many hundreds of thousands of dollars that brought to the community.
Absolutely.
But Quentin was telling me that this sheet was like
Mayor Lucas.
Yeah, Mayor Lucas was like, "Oh yeah, this was good. So thanks.
Yeah.
I love the city." So anyway,
They love you. Obviously.
thank you, sir.
Thanks, buddy.
You bet.
You're the best. Thanks
you're
for joining us. Folks, there's another reason why. It's just something about Kansas City. Today's episode is brought to you in part by the generosity of our friends at the Cockrell Family Foundation. Thank you.